I'd like to call this meeting of the Raton City Commission to order. Could we have a roll call, please? Michael Ann?
Mayor Sagata.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Schuster.
Present.
Commissioner Chatterley.
Present.
Commissioner Chavez.
Present.
Commissioner Giacomo.
Present.
Could you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. First up, we got recognition of visitors, Citizens of the Month, presentations, proclamations, and such. We have a couple of notices here. Notice of potential quorum, a quorum of Raton Waterworks Board members and Raton Public Service Board of Directors may attend this meeting under item B for the presentation of the fiscal year 18 approved audit reports by Carr, Rigg, and Ingram. We welcome you all here. Nice to see you here. Our next regular commission meeting is Tuesday, April 9th, 2019 at 6 p.m. here in the chambers. And we have another notice of potential quorum. Quorum of city commissioners may attend the New Mexico Municipal League District 3 meeting in Las Vegas, New Mexico on April 10th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Plaza Hotel in Las Vegas. Any other announcements at this time? Okay. This time we'll take comments from the general public. We'll listen to anything you have to say. If it's regarding anything that is on the agenda, we just ask that you wait until that item comes up. Anyone wishing to address the commission at this time? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to committee reports from commissioners. Commissioner Chatterley.
All right. I attended the North Central New Mexico Economic Development District Board meeting on March 15th in Santa Fe. I'm just going to kind of go over the highlights. Tomas Garcia remains the interim director. They will be hiring someone new mid-April, but he said he will be around for an additional month or so to help with the transition and did request to remain on the ReadyNet board because that's the relations that are kind of amended, so they're going to be continuing that. They have been continuing to go through and clean up the records and financials with some of the different issues that came up, and we did vote to support pursuing outstanding debt in the revolving loan fund of over $230,000 of payments that had kind of stopped or gone dormant, so they will be working on that. We did discuss adding either a set cost percentage or sliding scale to cover the grant administration and other fiscal agent services that North Central often provides for towns and projects. They also, there was a discussion about the possible need for some towns to have an administrative cost built into capital outlay funds for this kind of service, but that would obviously have to happen at a state level. This was very preliminary discussions, so nothing was really decided. Representative Bobby Gonzalez was attending the meeting and gave an overview of what happened with the Appropriations Committee during the legislative session this year, and he said that everyone was finally feeling almost normal again after the long session. Representative Jim Trujillo, who's also the chairman and president of the board, gave an overview of House Bill 6. He also stated that he gave his $400,000 of his legislative funding to North Central to help with the general cash flow of the non-metro area agency on aging to help deal with some of the issues that they have with the reimbursements and whatnot. There are 2 vacancies right now, the AAA manager and the finance director that does both for North Central and the AAA. Those are both vacant positions right now. And the AAA is currently working with Aging and Long-Term Services Division on the fiscal year 19 planning and service area provider contracts. So those are in the works. Under community development, Director Eric Jihadi, sorry, I was reading his name, it's harder to say. He said he is going to be starting an outreach campaign, so he'll be actually here in Raton discussing with us sometime this spring what his department can offer, because we're maybe not aware of everything that the services they provide. And he mentioned that ICIP training is going to be May 17th at Highlands in Las Vegas, so they're coming up this way a little bit. In terms of economic development, Scott Beckman discussed just kind of what he's been up to. And in this area, he attended the first of the Recharging Our Community Economy meetings that happened through Grow Raton last week. And he's been helping with the Vista volunteer at the Cole Camp Kitchen. He's also working on some other projects, most specifically in Cuesta, Angel Fire, and the Enchanted Circle. And in a final note, the Southwest Region Economic Development Association, which includes Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and New Mexico, is going to be holding their annual conference in Santa Fe in December. The next meeting for North Central will be June 21st in Santa Fe. I met on March 15th with representatives from Rambling Around Raton, Healthy Kids, Healthy Community, the Department of Health, and Raton Main Street. And the first three have been working on a Walk Your City initiative and been discussing putting up signs promoting walking around the downtown area that would promote public places and say things like it's a 5-minute walk to borrow a book, or it's a 3-minute walk to a city park, or a 5-minute walk to disc golf, that kind of thing. So when when Raton Main Street found out that they were working on that, they said, hey, let's talk with the branding team because they're doing wayfinding. So we kind of decided that we could coordinate efforts and merge ideas. So I handed out, on the third page of what I handed out tonight, there was some samples that we came up with that we emailed out to them that just kind of has some sample signs of what branded It's a 5-Minute Walk signs could look like. So we are working with them to figure out where those could go, and another thing and kind of the wording and the distances, so that's kind of a partnership there. And another possible idea that group would specifically like is some kind of You Are Here map near where the bus stop area is by Heritage Park, with the public and historic areas marked. We don't have a meeting set this time, but we're kind of communicating through email as we work on that. And on this, we're going to move on to the branding team. So the branding team met March 11th at the Center for Community Innovation. And so we kind of had some wayfinding examples that are ready to look at. So the first page is kind of the stuff that we were looking at for possibly uptown. And the second page is kind of an idea for some of the poles downtown. And it's still very much open to feedback, so these were just mock-ups that we were looking at. So what we'll be doing over the next little while is looking around town and figuring out what should the sign say, which direction should the arrows point, and then I talked to Scott and he might be able to help us with actually mapping that and then getting with DOT and getting access to those signs. So that's where we are on that. We did finalize a list of your past 2 taglines, which Leighton Moon is turning into pre-made graphics that will be available to our partners to use. The full-page ad for the Albuquerque Summer Guide that was approved at our last commission meeting is almost finalized, and Jessica Barfield is working on that right now. We've been working on a couple of pop-up banners for the Visitor Information Center. We really want local photos. We do not want to use stock photos for these, and we want people in these photos. And with the design, they have to be horizontal, so we have kind of hit a wall, and it's made it quite a challenge. So it's just hard. And it's hard because we want some outdoor photos and we don't have a lot to choose from, and this isn't the best time of year to go snap a photo quite yet. So I emailed back and forth with Dee, and we really wanted to have them ordered by this Friday. We're going to try hard to see what we have, and so we're working on getting those, but hopefully we'll have them at least for the summer season. The monument sign, we are working on that still. We have some really rough ideas, but we're going to take a field trip on Tuesday with Mr. Berry and look at just location ideas and kind of get an idea of how much space we have, and photograph some possible sites. And then we working with Scott and Michael Ann to find a time for a merchandising meeting. And Jessica Barfield is going to be setting a date in April for the first partnership meeting, and our next meeting is scheduled for April 8th. The Beautification Coalition held the Summer of Color benefit concert on March 16th at the Schuler. Over $1,300 was raised, and that was at $10 a ticket, so we had a wonderful turnout. The music was great, so we had an awesome audience, lots of energy, and there is a potential to expand that concert next spring. In addition to the funds I talked about at my last report, we've received an additional We've received $3,000 from the Whitehead Foundation, $4,000 from the Sloat Prince Foundation, $3,000 from another foundation who wishes to remain anonymous. And we still have a fundraiser coming up, Classic Night at the Movies, Wednesday, May 29th, which will be Disney's animated Peter Pan. We're still collecting events. Today we started an email around with what we've collected so far, and those are events that basically take place from May 1st through the very beginning of September. And our goal is to have posters printed by mid-April and have those up at the end of April to start advertising for May. And the goal is to have those beautification efforts bigger and better than last year, and we do not have a meeting scheduled at this time. The Senior Center Board I was not able to attend. That was March 20th here in Raton. I know the next meeting is May 21st. And I just wanted to say one other little thing. With our recent joint meetings with RPS, and I needed a little bit more background on power, so last Tuesday Mr. Berry was kind enough to take me on a little field trip. I was able to look at where the Burrow Canyon line comes into town and at the RPS facilities, including the Jenbacher unit, and I got a bigger picture of things, which I very much enjoyed. At the power plant, I was completely overcome by the legacy and the pride that's taken at that facility and its craftsmanship, and what a treasure it is. And I'd just like to thank the generations of people and the families that worked there and provided power to Raton and still do. And I'm definitely looking forward to taking my kids on a tour there sometime. So, thank you. And that's all I had.
All righty. Commissioner Giacomo.
Raton Public Service Company met on February 27th on Wednesday evening, February 27th, 2019. The Raton Public Service Board of Directors and visitors heard from John Budd, owner of Awaken 1605 LLC, and Steve Herrera of Inner Soul, about a solar project they're working on near Aguilar, Colorado, and how it could possibly help the Raton move into the direction of self-reliance renewable power. They covered everything from construction to battery storage and backup to financing. After about an hour of question and answering, the meeting rolled over into the RPS board meeting. Financial and statistic information was covered by Office Manager and Bookkeeper Jessica Gonzalez. General Manager Sandy Chavez reported on the discussion and approval of RPS Resolution 2019-2 policy for acceptance of debt and credit cards or electronic means of payment for utilities and related services. Also discussion and approval of ECA, which is Energy Cost Adjustment per City of Raton Ordinance 986 to help offset the cost of the increase of tri-hydro generation transmission incorporated. The ECA will be about an increase of 2.6% on the purchase power charge of the bill. Assistant General Manager Dave Pancino reported that Unit 4 did not run this month due to a power outage problem downline that kicked the unit as it started up. David also reported that there was an incident at the Oxy substation. A conduit slice pulled apart and ignited a small grass fire that was quickly put out by the Raton Fire Department. Report on the Arthur Johnson Memorial Library Advisory Board was held on March 19th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. The upgrading of the COLA system is still in the works. The Darton Trust status remains unchanged. The second half of this year's state grant in aid was received in the amount of $3,754.80. Circulation was down under 4,000 for both months of January and February, probably due to the cold weather and windy conditions. Statistical report for a month of January 2019, donations were zero, fines were $146.29, copies made was $500.10, memorials were $100, programs held in the library were 11, programs attended by 50 persons, story hours held in the library was 4, attended by 29 persons. Statistical and report for the month of February as it followed. Donations were $3,754.80, which was from the state grant aid. Fines were $83.25. Copies made were $554.10. Memorials were 0. Programs held in the library were 11, attended by 74 persons. Story hours held in the library was 4, attended by 32 persons. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Chavez.
I do. The Raton Water Board met on March 19th. During the meeting, we found Lake Maloya started spilling March 16th, and our reserves at Eagle Nest have reached the maximum so that we'll be getting our full allotment from Eagle Nest this year, which is over 12,000 acre feet. We heard a final report on the Hart Brilliant project. It is mostly completed with the exception of some ditch rehab, and is projected overlay to be done in the fall of 2019. We had a report on the filter plant project, which will begin April 1st. This is a real large, complicated project, and contractors are already on the scene. Approve the purchase of a new John Deere 310 SL backhoe for the water department. The old one was transferred to the City Public Works for use at the solid waste facility. We had a discussion on the pending water rates increase for 2019. We discussed the wastewater projections for 2019, and we read a draft for the new job application for the new Raton Water General Manager, since Mr. Campbell is pending retirement. And Geneva was tested and received her certification as a procurement officer. Congratulations to her. That's all I have on the water. Do you have anything to add?
No, good job.
The Raton Financial Board met Monday, March 25th at the office here. We approved the financials and the report to be presented to the City Commission tonight. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thanks, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Schuster.
My report is a little short, but I did attend the Water Board meeting with Commissioner Chavez on the 19th, and he covered it well. On March 18th was the Housing Authority Board. I was not able to attend that meeting. However, their new board members were present, and they had a full quorum that day, which was nice for them. On March 4th, there was a chamber board meeting. I had family issues and was unable to attend that, but did stop in and talk to the chamber and visit the visitor center this month. One of their main issues, well, they have hired a new coordinator for the visitor center who I think will do a pretty good job. He's working hard at creating some good coordination to that visitor center, and has some ideas on making it the best place it can be for out-of-state visitors who stop in. One of the problems they have is a shortage of state maps. I was able to call the Department of Transportation and talk to a few people who are superior to the woman that they have to call, and alert them that they were out of maps, and it does affect visitor centers. During the half hour, 45 minutes I was at the visitor center, there were 5 requests for state maps, which they've been out of since October, I believe. So I think it may get addressed. On the 18th, there was a Coal Camp Community Kitchen meeting. They will be having an open house on April 2nd, and if you listen to KRTN, you can get finer details on that open house. I think they will be charging a small fee for that. They're using it somewhat as a fundraiser. They will have hors d'oeuvres that day and samples of food from those people who are using the kitchen. So it should be a good thing to show up for April 2nd. And then tonight, I just stopped in before this meeting at Crime Stoppers, and they will be posting on their website a message to building owners who have abandoned and empty buildings with broken windows and boarded up windows, that those types of buildings do invite crime. And we are working hard in this community to decrease crime, so they will be asking them to, on their website, if anyone knows of the owners of empty buildings, to please ask them to clean those buildings up. And that's about all.
Great, okay. As for myself, I'll keep it brief. Senior citizens did meet last week. We discussed some issues we're having with our Mora Senior Center about the insurance availability on some vehicles. On other news in that area, at the beginning of the year, we only received about a quarter of our federal money. We got the remaining of that today. However, they did pull some state funds with it, and we did get the remaining money. But all in all, we got probably $30,000 to $40,000 more than what we started the year with, so that's always a plus. And we will be meeting in April on the 17th. We've got to discuss some plans going forward with our 2 centers in Mora County. So we will be meeting on the 17th. Did attend the RPS meeting with Commissioner Giacomo. He covered that well. And then 2 weeks ago, the New Mexico Municipal League, we went to Washington, D.C., where we met with the New Mexico delegation. We discussed, specifically, I discussed our project on First Street involving opportunity zones and the new market tax credit demarcation line. And I found out that it literally will take an act of Congress to move the opportunity zone line. It's designated by the then Governor Martinez. It goes to Congress, they vote on it and says, okay, that's where it is, and it's there till 2026. Now they're gonna look and see what they can do as far as the other line for the new tax credits. That's more along the lines of our census. I told them all we want to do is move it 750 to 1,000 feet to the west for about 6 blocks, and that would set us up. Affect maybe 150 to 200 people. They didn't see any problem with that they being our delegation and the staff. They're looking into that and see what we can go from there, because right now that project is kind of dead in the water without these tax credits and the opportunity zone stuff. So hopefully we can get that going. We'll be in contact with those offices going forward. And that's about all I've got right now. So I guess we will move into the business part of the meeting if there's no other comments. All right. Item 7A, approval of the March 12th, 2019 regular commission meeting minutes and a revision to minutes for February 12th special joint city commission and RPS meeting. Minutes were in your packet for your review. Any additions?
Previous to the meeting, there was no revision that was taken. We didn't need a revision on the 12th, on the February 12th. I found no omissions or corrections. I make a motion to approve item A, which is the approval of the minutes.
Hey, we have a motion and a second to approve item A. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Item B, presentation of the fiscal year 18 approved audit reports by Carr, Riggs, and Ingram LLC. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, we have Mr. Bowers from Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. Hopefully I'm correct on that, correct? And his presentation to you on the approved and now public report is a part of that process. And so we really have 2 reports, one for the city, and that would include the water utility, but Raton Public Service Company is considered a component entity, so that would be a separate report. But Mayor, if we could, I'd like to turn over the floor to Mr. Bowers to
Absolutely.
do his
Welcome.
presentation.
Thank you all very much, commissioners. Thank you for having us. My name's AJ. I'm the partner with Carr, Riggs and Ingram that oversaw the audit out of Albuquerque. So I brought the financials up. You should have a copy with you. I also brought the Raton Public Service. The presentation here, for the most part, will just cover over the city, but a lot of the stuff when it comes to the opinions and the findings of the Raton Public Service are included within the city's report. I've got a quick PowerPoint. We did do a handout for you that has the summation of that I wanted to make sure that you had in front of you. Just if you have any questions, please stop me. I'll go ahead and and I'll answer any questions you have. So what we'll kind of go over today is I want to go over the timelines, the reports themselves, the findings. I'll just kind of note that they were there. We talked about them in detail at the exit conference. They're in the report. Some financial statement highlights, just so you can kind of see some trends over the last 5 years at the city itself, the single audit, and some changes that are occurring. So the timeline of the audit, just how long these processes take, we kind of started the audit really in June of last year. We were on site 2 different weeks, the 20th of August as well as in November. The findings were delivered December 7th, and the financial statement was delivered to the state by the regulatory deadline of the 15th. It was dated of December. It was dated the 14th of December. And we had the exit conference as well. The board presentations today, it was released last week, so that's what the last kind of this lull has been over the last few weeks. So the auditors' reports themselves, what we're here for is really, these are your financial statements, so the responsibility of the city and of RPS, and we put about 6 pages into it. There's 3 different reports that we go through. The first one in the front is going to be around pages 10, 11, 12 area. That is the independent auditor's report. That report basically is us asserting that we were able to do an audit. You complied, you gave us all the information that we needed. There was no areas that we couldn't obtain sufficient audit evidence from the balances that were asserted to us, and the opinion on that is unmodified. Unmodified is the best opinion you can get. It just means that any misstatements would not affect the user of those financial statements. So that's a good job to everybody involved. The second portion, those are also, if you're looking to try and follow along, it's kind of right here on the top of the handout. It'll be.
That's fine, and I apologize. I think I'm missing some pages in this handout I gave you, so
Oh, that's okay. I'm sorry.
you'll have to follow along on the screen.
The second 2 reports, and there's every audit in the state of New Mexico is done under Yellow Book or government auditing standards. That report is negative assurance. What it implies is we do an audit, we have to look at internal controls, and we report upon anything that we find. In the state of New Mexico, we have to report everything that we find. So anything that would be considered a finding of some sort gets reported in that report. There were 6 findings total. There were no material weaknesses, so there was 1 significant deficiency, and then 5 that would be considered other matters. This would normally be a comment to management to say, hey, this was noted within the financial statement audit. But really pretty clean overall. 2 of those were related to the component unit, and then the other 4 were related to the city. Again, with those internal controls, it's a negative assurance report. So it says these are the items that come to our attention. Others may exist that we did not identify because we don't test or give an opinion on internal controls. The last report that's in there is new this year because it was related to the single audit. So the city had spent over $750,000 in the airport improvement grant, and so we had to do what was called a single audit over that. So we audit for compliance with all kinds of different compliance requirements and control testing around those federal funds, and we rendered an unmodified opinion as well. So again, you complied in all material respects with that grant, and we didn't note it. We didn't have any findings of note in that grant. So anytime there's a new process, that's a good job to not have any findings there. This here is a list of the findings. There's 6 of them. Like I said, this is just the titles. They're detailed in the financial statements. We did discuss them in detail, so we won't go over them here today. Like I said, there was 1 in the significant deficiency. The others were just small little things. I'm sure we'll get cleaned up pretty quick. So what I'd like to do is give you guys some trends. So when we talk about the citywide balance sheet, that's a statement of net position. And in these next couple of graphs, we've got some 5-year trends for you for the assets, the liabilities, and net position. those come from this chart that's on the bottom of here. So you have the actual numbers that generate the charts themselves, just so you kind of have some frame of reference. These first few slides are really about the city as a whole. So that would include the governmental activities as well as the business type with RWW. It does not have RPS included in that. The assets themselves are pretty consistent. You can go ahead. So this is your asset line, okay, up at the top. It's a pretty consistent trend year over year. Your yellow line there is your total capital assets, and then the lower line on the bottom, that's your cash and investments. So you can see there hasn't been a whole lot of transition for the last 5 years. On the liability side, there is a little bit of change, and I wanted to point out what those are. That moves. So the top line is your total liabilities at the city itself. So it is ticking up over the last few years, about $4 million. Now, one key to that blue line is the debt. So the debt is decreasing. So that's, you're paying it off, you're not taking out more, you know, the common sense. The yellow, that is in 2015, that was the addition of the net pension liability related to the proportionate share of para, okay? So that was a new standard that changed back in 2015. Those liabilities, they're broken out, you know, the billions and billions of dollars of liability at para, there's an allocation percentage that comes down to the city. So that's what that line went on, and it changes every year. In 2018, that was the addition of retiree health care. So with the retiree health care coming on the books this year, that again increases the liability. The reason I like to show you see that the city's managing their cash well, they're managing their assets okay, they're managing their debt, but the liabilities increase because of some of those things. So those are the decisions and the things that you're involved with when you talk with your legislatures and when you deal with your bonding folks. These are the numbers that they're looking at. This next one is going to be basically the equity, your statement of net position down here in your net position itself. So that yellow line is going to be your total net position. And then the one on the bottom is your unrestricted. So total is going to have everything in there. Anything that's been spoken for, your assets minus your capital assets minus your debt, your restricted items, and everything like that. The unrestricted, as you can see, that's things that have not been spoken for. So in the current year, it went negative because, of course, there was the addition of the OPEB. So it's something to be aware of. It's just what those categories are. Because when bonding folks look at ratings, these are the types of things they're paying attention to. Okay. The next is really your statement of activity. So it's a citywide income statement. So what's been going on over the last 5 years on our revenue and expense side. The revenues is that blue line. Okay, so again, very consistent. And then over the last few years, you know, your expenses they've ticked up a little bit. And what that's truly going to be from is that includes the pension expense and the OPEB expense and those fluctuations in those liabilities every year. This graph does not include items like capital spending or look for, you know, addition of fixed assets or your debt expenses, because those run through the balance sheet. This does include depreciation, but that way you just have an idea. The general fund, so I always like to look at the general fund because it kind of shows your standard operations, you know, your revenues, your expenditures. They're consistent year over year, and you're not really, you know, over expending every year. So this doesn't include transfers. So your revenues for the most part outpace the expenditures, and sometimes that's something, you know, might have some transfers over to some other funds, but not too much. Your total cash and investments have been going up in the general fund, so that's good proper management. So, and then this is just a budget variance. So every year you make budget amendments throughout the year, and you kind of get to a spot where at the end of the year you have your final budget. So we look at that final budget in comparison to actual expenditures and to see what your positive variance is. Every year you've had a positive variance, so you've budgeted to spend more than you truly have. But as someone who's heavily involved in the budgeting process, you see that you're not always going to spend everything that's budgeted. You're going to spend to put more in there, but you can at least see that you're on track there. There are a couple more slides. These ones here are actually just over the business type activities, so RWW, sanitation department, all of that. This will kind of show the same type thing, so we won't spend a ton of time on them. Again, your assets, okay, consistent year over year. So Liabilities, debt coming down, liabilities have actually remained pretty steady, which means other things have been paid more timely and items like that. They're paid, your debt's not really increasing, your AP's not really increasing, it's probably going down, and then, your net pension liability and your OPEBs are now what's kind of driving that up. And then again, here's your equity line, that unrestricted, everything sits in unrestricted if it's not in capital in the enterprise funds. So it's got a positive equity. So that's a good, healthy equity position there. Your statement of activities, the same thing. This is going to exclude those capital expenditures, revenues and expenses, similar trends. So as you can see, there's nothing that's really outlying, whether it's the business type activities or the government themselves. They're very consistent. Okay, so all of those numbers are all within here. I just wanted to at least, sometimes in a graph, they just don't show up too well on the paper. They're a little small. The single audit itself, we did test that airport improvement grants. What we do want to draw out is there's about 12 different compliance requirements that you have to go through with those grants, and you have to input controls around them and process and verify all the different compliance pieces. These are the ones here. There were 7 different compliance requirements that are considered direct material that we had to test for that grant and test those controls. So those are the ones that we've tested. And we were able to render that unmodified opinion, and again, no findings that we noted. The big change on the financials this year was that implementation of GASB Statement 75. Just as a frame of reference for the way that works is obviously there's 90 GASB statements that have been issued since GASB's inception in the early 80s. 30 of them deal with some sort of termination and post-employment benefit to the to folks. So they're very liability based. This is the newest iteration, and they know that there's a bunch of pools at different states, and they allocate them out. So para, I think last I heard, was around 67 or 70% funded. State retiree health care's, I don't know if it was 11 or 16. It's not nearly the same as Paris. So they're going to be making some changes on how that works. We do a lot of work around that. We have to test the actuaries and the valuations, and in theory, there are things that you all are looking at as well. One of the calculations that's in there, I do anticipate this being a volatile number over the next few years, because who can predict the price of healthcare next year, much less 50 years from now? So that's the kinds of calculations that go into it. So you're going to see some ups and downs. But it did, with the implementation of that standard, there was a current year restatement to the net position for the implementation of about $4.6 million over the city as a whole. 2 upcoming standards that could affect the city is, one is going to be Statement 84. That is impacted this year. Okay, so that's any of your agency funds. There's not a whole lot that you have, but what they've done is it's a presentation change. So they're actually going to have a statement of net position of fiduciary activities, and then they're also going to have an income statement related to the fiduciary activities in the front of the financial statement now. The other is if you have administrative involvement related to those funds, then they're actually considered city funds. So any of the agency funds, will walk through what administrative involvement means. They just released the implementation guide about a month ago, which changed the definition of what everybody thought it was going to be. So we got to make sure that we get that part right. Okay, so we can help with that implementation. And then 87, that one will be 2021, and that will change the way leases are handled. So if you ever enter any sort of lease, they're all going to be capital leases. So what that's going to do is it puts an asset on the books, it puts a liability on the books, and then it's a right to lease asset or things like that. So this one here, we have not recommended any early implementation. I know there's a couple people that have considered it. The FASB is currently struggling through it, so we want to see them struggle for a little bit first before we put it on and figure out how we're going to handle it. So it's going to be a change. This is part of the last conversion into IFRS, the international standards, to where everybody's kind of looking at the same thing. But again, it's more debt. That's what I look at, because I know they're just trying to make sure all the liabilities have been counted for. Last couple things that we just like to point out, just with all these standards that change, all the technical adjustments, the regulatory requirements when it comes to the state or the feds, just continuing to do training. Our firm has done some free training in the past couple of years. We haven't scheduled that yet, but when we do, we'll let you know, and you guys are welcome to come to that. We do a variety of topics that are convenient. If there's anything that's specific, we do that as well, so just let us know that we can help out in that area. The other that I just want to bring to the attention is the IT environment, is just to be cautious of it and to be aware. I've had too many clients in the last 2 years that something has gone wrong, and I never thought we'd see it to that level, but I have one a university client that is doing who's going to be doing an IT assessment, and we've got some specialists out in Florida. That's the only thing they do, and they're coming out to work on their area. It's not necessarily the IT department for just exactly the the financial statements, but it's the city, or for them it's a college vulnerability. They had actually had a malware attack about 2 years ago, and then I was actually I have another client who currently their entire system is down in one department, and they're going to have to go back to the October 2017 records and recreate all of that. So I found out some additional audit risk on that one. But it's things to be aware of, and there's hacking attempts and different things going on. So just knowing if there's ever any concern, there's resources out there that I think the city should always be looking at, because there's always some sort of vulnerability. Okay. Other than that, I just want to say thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to serve the city. Michael Ann, Geneva, Sandy, you guys have all been great. We thank you all for the hospitality and the work, and continue to work with you guys and to continue to build on a relationship. If you have any questions, let me know. My contact information is on that last page. And you're always able to reach out to me. What questions do you have?
Any questions?
Very nicely put together, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
Any questions from our other entities out here?
I do have one, I think, we had sent the changes, well, we had caught the,
Which page?
So just send a balance calc. I think that we checked with Luis and he had the correct figures. It's just that the dates were.
The dates
so
didn't get
yes,
adjusted.
Right, so we should be working with the 2018 and 2017.
Yeah, you should
instead of
be.
17 and
I don't know
16.
why that's off like
Yeah,
that. Okay.
that was the only thing. But we had.
The numbers are right.
Yeah, they were. We double checked that.
We
so.
just, names
That's a
and
good-
dates apparently we're not very good with.
Mr. Litchfield, Mr. Campbell, any questions? Any further questions, any further discussion? Mr. Berry?
We'll take a deep breath and start on the next one here.
Yeah, they just said it's time to start. I know you were at the training last week, so I know it's time again. I'm excited. So, see y'all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
this time we'll... Okay, so that's the presentation part. No further questions. Item C is deliberate and act on resolution 2019-16, acceptance and approval of the fiscal year 18 audits. Mr. Berry, any comments?
Mayor and Commission, the resolution would be required now currently that the Commission accept the report as presented. So you have a resolution in your packet, and if the Commission votes favorably on the resolution, City Clerk will submit that to the State Auditor Office.
Actually goes to DFA, so, yeah, this is a new DFA requirement, so what we'll do is, we did post a notice of potential quorum so that RPS Board and the Water Board could also attend. Their individual boards will also adopt this resolution at their next meeting, and it'll go to their financial analysts as well. So.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2019-16, acceptance and approval of FY 18 audits.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2019-16. Is there any further discussion? We have a roll call vote, please, Michael Ann?
Mayor Pro Tem Schuster,
Yes.
Commissioner Giacomo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chatterley,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yes.
Mayor Sagata.
Yes, approved, thank you. Item D, deliberate and act on board appointments to Raton Waterworks Board and the Library Board. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, in your packet, you have applications for these board appointments. Number one, you have the Water Board, Utility Commission, and you'll see from what's in the packet that member Mark Morris, his term will expire this month, and so he has given you an application for reappointment. That is a 6-year appointment, and you'll remember on that board there are 3 members that have staggered 6-year terms appointed by the commission, and then 2 city commissioners will sit on that board. Also, you see the library board. All of the members of the library board will need reappointment at this point, and you see the stagger there. And in your packets, you have the applications of the 5 current members of the library board. Those are Ron Schuster, Janice Schrumpert, Joe Rodman, Harold Brewer, and Carol Woodworth.
I have one question, Mr. Berry. Mr. Schuster would get appointed and then terminate. Are we going to adjust his year again here?
Mayor, we would have to come back then and reappoint again in a year because we need to maintain that stagger. So I would anticipate that we will, obviously, that's been expired for a while, but try to come up with a better system of managing these reappointments. But we would reappoint Mr. Schuster a year from now.
Okay. Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve the board appointments for the Raton Waterworks Board and the Library Board.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second to approve the positions for the Raton Waterworks and the Library Board. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item E, deliberate and act on an MOU between the City of Raton and the Raton Little League. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, you have the memorandum of understanding in your packet between the City of Raton and Raton Little League. This is an agreement that we execute every year at this time, and the term of this agreement is 1 year. I believe we might have some representatives of Little League here to answer any questions that you have, but this is a long-standing agreement with Raton Little League. The agreement kind of spells out who's doing what. Of course, we have some city personnel involved in maintenance of the fields. Liability is an issue with this. I've reviewed the agreement. You have my recommendation to renew this agreement with Raton Little League, and also covers both baseball and softball. Mayor and Commission.
Any questions for Mr. Berry? Would you like to address us, please? You can give us your name and
Yeah,
that.
so my name is Kenneth Long. I'm actually the president. We have James V. Hill, who's the vice president. We have Ashley Long, who's our secretary. And then we have Zach Fernandez, who is our head umpire. So the only one that is continuously on the board would be Zach. The rest of us are new. As of 2 weeks ago, it's all become a very fun thing to learn. I know per the MOU that you guys need to see that we are a nonprofit organization, as well as you need to see that we carry the right insurance. I do have copies of all of that for all of you, if I can go ahead and give them to you.
Absolutely.
Other than that, it's, as the Mr. Berry stated, it's short, sweet, to the point with the MOU. Changed nothing from last year and the year before, as far as I know.
Thank you.
And from there, if you guys have any questions, we'd like to answer them.
Any questions for these folks? Anybody? I'd just like to state, thank you very much for doing this. I know you guys were a couple weeks ago in dire needs, it looked like.
Yes, sir.
So I appreciate y'all stepping up and doing this.
Yes.
Did over here, that's what I wanted to say too, is that, because the Little League looked like there for a minute, it was gonna flounder for the season, and that was really disappointing, but thank you guys for stepping up, all of you.
What you're doing is some of the most important work.
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Barry and I did our share of Little League coaching and that, so
There.
we know what you're going through.
It's a good partnership, Mayor and
It is.
Commission, and the city stands ready to assist, as you say, in this important mission.
Make a motion to accept the MOU between the city of Raton and the Raton Little League.
I'll second.
We have a motion to accept the MOU between the City of Raton and Raton Little League, and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Against? Nothing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
it. Have a great season.
Yeah.
Item F, deliberate and act on revised economic development agreement with High Bay Enterprises. Man, I can't read tonight, but thank you. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, you remember at our last meeting, the commission had approved this participation agreement with High Bay Enterprises, and we went to the execution phase, and the representative from High Bay had noted that there was a little bit of wording, some minor wording in there that he had hoped made it into that approved version, and we were not exactly on the same page on a few words there. So we made that revision to it. I'll point out what those revisions are, and we stated that we would need to come back to the commission to get your approval once again. So I'm looking on page 3 at the project contribution, the substantive contribution from High Bay section, and under section B, it states that the job creation target shall be met on or before 3 years, and this is the revised language, from the date the facility is open to the public. I think we had a date in there in the previous version, so that is revised. And then as a definition of a job, that means a permanent full-time position or the equivalent of a permanent full-time position. So we added the words "or the equivalent" to the agreement, and then there's another place, and I believe that's on page 4, where we said that the requirement of High Bay would be, and we're looking at D, job target date reporting requirements, and the sentence reads, High Bay will provide the city with semi-annual copies of High Bay's form workforce reports no later than May 1st and November 1st of each year, commencing on the date of the opening of the project to conduct operations and ending on the termination of the agreement term. So previously, I think that we had an arbitrary date in there. Now it is the opening of the project to conduct operations. So those were the changes that were made.
All right, any questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve revised economic development agreement with High Bay Enterprises.
I'll
Second.
Oh. 2 seconds.
We have a motion and a second to approve the revised economic development agreement with High Bay Enterprises. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item G, deliberate and act on economic development service agreement with the Center for Innovation. Mr. Berry?
Mayor and Commission, this goes back to the request for proposals issued by the City of Raton for Economic Development Services. There was a proposal received by the Center for Community Innovation, and that proposal had several components to it. So earlier, the Commission had entered into an agreement for the Creative Startup Boot Camp. There was a timing element with that. That has moved along. This agreement contains some different components, and I'll brief through what that was. But if you recall, the commission had stated that they would award $10,000 stipend to the Center for Community Innovation for these additional items. And under the scope of work, I'll try to go through that really quickly. The center shall develop and deliver a business incubator program, and you can see that the program shall consist of 7 primary elements. Those are listed. Business assistance, community support, incubator space, market access, promotion, capital assistance, and talent. You have a detail there on what is involved in that scope of work. And then it also identifies some of the performance standards that go along with that. The center shall identify potential capital support programs for entrepreneurs and shall work to support the establishment of an early stage investor fund. The center shall work to match businesses with established loan and grant programs offering favorable terms to businesses. And I can tell you, Mayor and Commission, that they have got a good head start on that program that is contained in their proposal. So we look for that to be a successful tool as far as business startup. The center shall utilize its experience in recruitment tools to actively identify potential entrepreneurs that may have an interest in business establishment in Raton. The center shall establish programs to develop entrepreneurial skills, experience, and talent. So I've gone through the scope of work pretty quickly. Obviously, there's a lot of detail to it. The center had some other conflicting things tonight, so if you have any questions, I've met with them this week. I'll do my best to try to answer those. A lot of that information is spelled out in their proposal, and then you have additional detail in the agreement.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Barry? Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Economic Development Services Agreement with the Center for Community Innovation.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve the agreement with the Center for Innovation. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item H, deliberate and act on award of lodgers tax funding to attend the Outdoor Retailer Show in Denver, June 18th through 20th, 2019. Mr. Barry.
Mayor and Commission, in your packets, you have some information that the city received from New Mexico Partnership, and it states that the Outdoor Retailer Show will be held in Denver in June. And New Mexico Partnership has tried to put together a combined effort for New Mexico entities to participate in this opportunity. And of course, in Raton here, we have identified outdoor recreation as a potential important part of our economic development plan going forward. And we do believe that an outdoor retailer or numerous outdoor retailers would be successful in Raton, and certainly that's on our list of recruitment. Mr. Chatterley from our Raton Parks and Recreation Department has had communications with New Mexico Partnership, and he's here to answer any questions about how this opportunity would be organized and conducted. You do see a proposed cost from New Mexico Partnership in the agreement, $2,825 for the booth space, $295 for registration fee, $500 for furniture that would be provided at the booth, and so that's a total of $3,620. I think we would talk about some additional funds for travel expenses associated with that, so we're probably looking north of $4,000 commitment, and we would bring this to the commission as the potential of non-promotional lodgers tax funding, or it possibly could be looked at as promotional portion of lodgers tax funding. Now, this came up fairly quickly. This has not been vetted by the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board. It's come directly to the commission because you can see some of the deadlines contained in the email. So, Mayor, I'll stop there. Mr. Chatterley is here to add additional information or answer questions that you might have.
Mr. Chatterley.
Sir, Mayor, members of the commission, I have, unfortunately, I would hope to have had this in your packet. So it is a little delayed, but it gives you a better understanding of what the Outdoor Retailer Show is, what they are trying to, kind of what their modus is. And in short, to echo what Mr. Berry said, I think it is a fabulous opportunity. For the last 20 years, this show had been in Salt Lake City. 2018, it came to Denver, which made it more reasonable for New Mexico to participate. And so it is an opportunity to show the world that Raton is interested in outdoor recreation. Some of the numbers there has last year, their first year in Denver, had 26,000 attendees, 1,400 global brands were there. They're expecting 30,000 attendees this year. So it is really the chance to not only partner with the state of New Mexico, which obviously is, as we talked about, is promoting and really looking into the future of outdoor recreation. So it'd be a good partnership with the state to let them know that Raton is interested in helping them promote New Mexico as a recreation destination. But then obviously to be there in front of 1,400 businesses, 26,000 participants, and really let them know that that we mean business as far as outdoor recreation. So it is kind of quick. The show isn't until June, so there is some time to plan our strategy as to what we would do once we're there. But the New Mexico partnership kind of needed a commitment up front to see if, because there's only 4 cities that they were going to try to partner with, and I let them know when I got the email that this was something that we'd be interested in considering. No promises made. They were very excited to hear, that the border community with Colorado was interested. And so I think it's something that we should explore. I'm not trying to lobby that we should go. I think it's really up to you all. If you think it's something that's worth considering, I would say yes. But like I said, we have never gone before. There's no going now is not going to make that big of a difference. But I do think with the things that are going on in southern Colorado, the different things that are starting to blossom around here, it would be a great way to network. This a bunch of businesses are there. We could try to attract businesses to come here and start their manufacturing or their distribution here out of Raton. You all know we're very well located with I-25 and the Ports of the Plains and 8764. That and just to attract people to the area. So if you have any questions, there's a little more information in here, but it is, when it comes to the outdoor recreation industry, this is the place to be. This is where it all happens. So
I think the timing's kind of unique in that we're dealing with the possibility of expanding into the Crazy French Ranch and that with Colorado partnership. So
absolutely,
I think it's something that we may consider.
Which 4 cities did you said that they?
I tried to drag it out of her name is Melinda Allen. I tried to drag it out of her, and she was very tight-lipped as to who that might be. So I don't know whether it was that there was no one else participating yet, and so she did it, or it was going to be a go to the highest bidder kind of deal and see who was willing to put in the most. But she did say we did have a slot, that she was holding one for us. So I can tell her no, or I can tell her yes, and we can go from there.
Well, with our involvement with the Better City and what they've recommended, I think that we shouldn't miss this opportunity.
Right.
This, personally, I don't think we should. That way we can get your feet on the ground. The reason I asked you about that is they're gonna be a booth, and then they're gonna give Rio Rancho a football field, and they're gonna give Raton a little corner over here in the.
So from what I understand, New Mexico Partnership, like the state of New Mexico will have a main booth, and then there'll be another booth, the same size as their main booth, that'll be divided up into 4 portions.
Okay.
So the 4 communities will all have equal representation.
Well, I've been to outdoor shows at Denver before, and they're well attended up there, and what you have listed here is the possibility. I think we should act on it.
Absolutely. I think just in talking, it'd be nice to make a like a postcard size card that said, has the new brand, Your Pass to Adventure on the back, have all the different recreation opportunities that we have here. Looking for a new place to do business, come explore Raton and just entice people to check it out, see what we got to offer.
Who's gonna do that, you?
Whoever you want to send. I would personally lobby to go because it would be awesome. I've been once before when it was in Salt Lake, and it was I would
What's the total
have a good
cost?
time. Total cost, I think he totaled it up, was a good bit, roughly about 4,000 plus.
4,000,
We,
we'll start with this.
Mayor and Commission, I think that we, should get some materials organized for this, a little bit of cost in that. We'd like to have some budget to do that. Of course, when we reach out to outdoor retailers, we try to tell them that, we're the home of the Whittington Center, and you have potentially 160,000 plus customers that come there annually. We have over 100,000 that go to Sugar Canyon State Park, and we try to tell them all of the outdoor recreation opportunities that we have. And a retailer should say, that's a lot of customers that come to Raton. So I think we want to put together materials that really show our strengths, something that, catches their eye. A little budget for that. Of course, I would like to see Mr. Chatterley attend this, and I think we would talk to some of our area partners, like maybe folks at Whittington Center, and see if they can, go along as well and help us with that end. So I think there are probably some partners that we could talk to as well. But I think we would probably try to put together something of a committee here and have Jared really ramrodding that effort.
How much do we need to commit to you right now to give us a slot?
I tried to call Melinda today to ask that specific question. What is the actual buy-in to make it? And she never returned my call, so I don't know that number right off the top of my head.
I'm guessing it was around that $3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have tried to get a hold of Ms. Kearns at the county to see if they wanted to kind of throw some money our way and kind of partner with us. I haven't heard back from her either, but I think, as Mr. Berry said, there is some possibility of some collaboration among other folks and maybe share the cost.
If we could at least get the money, approve the money, the $39.50 to get us in the door, and then as we develop a game plan, come back for additional funding for that.
That makes sense, Mayor.
Yeah.
Sounds like
What
a plan.
about those guided hunts that happen in that Folsom area? Do you know of some of those people? Can we get numbers from them?
That's a good question. I can touch base with the Tri-State Outfitters and some of those guys who actually do that and find out what their numbers are and see if we can, dig into that direction. Sure, absolutely.
Mayor, I would just ask the commission for maybe a budget of $4,000 on this, and that'll give us a little leeway to maybe start some things, and we'll try to pull some parties in here, but we'll probably put together that game plan and come back and maybe ask for a little more, but I would recommend, if you want to consider this, establish a budget of $4,000. Michael Ann, what would be the appropriate way to go on this? Is it non-promo?
Well, we certainly have funds available still through contingency fund. I think Jared and I looked at it, and his Parks and Rec promotion line item doesn't quite have 4,000, but we do have monies available also in non-promotional, so as we've talked before, since we've paid off the debt at the Welcome Center,
Right.
we have additional funds that are accruing in the non-promotional fund. So I would probably feel comfortable with that, because then that doesn't take away any funds that the Lodgers Tax Board would
Right.
make recommendations for the remainder of the year, because you'll be seeing some proposals coming up for Gate City, some golf tournaments. There's going to be a few things that need to be funded before the end of June.
Sure. Any other questions, comments? At least 4,000, you might have to sleep in a tent, but
I'll try them out, all the different ones,
There you
North
go.
Face, you know, these other ones. I'll break them all in.
On the grounds.
that'll get us in the door though.
Yes, it will. That should solidify the deal.
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve $4,000 in allocation for the outdoor retailer show in Denver. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Item I, deliberate and act on Department of Homeland Security sub-recipient grant agreement for 2019 DOE WIP Safe Transportation Program. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, we have Chief Burke present to answer any specific questions that you got on this. I'll just kind of do a quick broad brush on it. It is called a sub-grantee, a sub-recipient grant agreement because this originates from a primary grant to New Mexico Department of Homeland Security from the United States Department of Energy, and then Raton would be a sub-recipient of grant funds. You have the agreement in your packet. It identifies a total award of $28,645.50, and that breaks down to $10,360.90 for chemical protective clothing and $18,284.60 for radiation monitoring / detection equipment and calibration. And obviously this is related to the Department of Energy WIP Safe Transportation Program. Chief Burke, if you want to come up and maybe add any information to something I might have missed, or commissioners, you can ask any questions here in regard to this item.
Commissioners, like Mr. Berry said, my name is Anthony, I'm the Deputy Chief of the Fire Department. He did cover it very well. It's a very straightforward grant. X dollars have to go to certain things, and we had to do our due diligence to show cause and where they were going, whether it's from requesting exact amounts and configuring monies to we're almost spending exact dollar amount. When money's not spent, it's taken back, as you know how grants work. At this time, I'd entertain any questions that you may have.
I would just note that on the front sheet, you see a pretty quick turnaround time. Performance period end date is May 31st of 2019.
Yeah, so this is also, level A, level B suits are being replaced and upgraded to the new NFPA in 2018 standards. And the radiation detection equipment is being updated to newer standards and for the recalibration of existing equipment that we have currently.
So these have to be expended by May 31st in 2019.
Yes.
Has the Raton unit ever been involved in the real scene?
And as far as radiation or for chemical?
Or both?
Yes, not to my knowledge that I've been here for radiation, just due to the construction and material for the true packs when they travel through. But we've had to don level A's and level B's before in the region that we cover.
Okay.
And these items are already quoted, and all we have to do is, with the granted permission from you, just
Take care of it.
take the next process step. Yes.
Make a motion.
Oh, second.
I'll make a motion to approve the Homeland Security sub-recipient grant agreement for the 2019 DOE WIP State Transportation Program.
We
I'll
have,
second.
we have a motion and a second to accept the grant agreement between the DOE with Safe Transportation Program. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item J, deliberate and act on letter of engagement from Module Sperling for bond counsel services related to refunding of NMFA Aquatic Center loans. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, we have 5 items on the agenda tonight that are related to funding issues, and they are all related to funding of transfer station construction and also the refunding issue of the aquatic center. We will get on the phone 2 gentlemen. Daniel Alsup from Modular Sperling will be on the phone. He is the attorney that is putting together some of the legal requirement documentation, the ordinances that you have.
Please enter your participant or moderator code, followed by the pound key.
In your packet, and additionally, we'll have Evan Kist. He is from RBC Capital. They will be the firm that
Please say your
places the
name, followed by the pound
financing.
key.
Raton City Commission.
So, Mayor, I don't know, ask him if they're there.
Evan, Daniel, are you able to hear us all right?
Yes, hello, hi, this is Evan, I can hear you fine.
Great.
Yes, sir, this is Daniel also.
So, why don't you give us 1 minute here? We're going to take action on the modular Sperling agreement, and then I will call on you gentlemen to start to get into the financing and the documents that we have in the packet. So give me 1 minute here. You do have a proposal from Modular Sperling, and this is related to refinancing 2 issues on the aquatic center. You see a fee, proposed fee of $15,000 per refunding. There are 2 refundings. Those are 2 separate finance issues that were executed in 2007 and 2009. We can answer any questions in regard to this. There will be a lot of information coming up on what's going on with that. We are refinancing those to save money, and so you have my recommendation to approve the agreement, and you have the option of listening to the presentation first and then asking any questions on it. And that's probably a good idea before you vote on the agreement.
That might be wise, yes.
So, gentlemen, I have advised the commission that we do have Evan Kist from RBC Capital on the phone, and then Daniel Alsup from the law firm of Modular Sperling. And Evan, how about if I turn it over to you at this point?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Well, hello, Mayor, City Commissioners, and staff. My name is Evan Kist. I work for RBC Capital Markets, the municipal advisor to the city. And thank you for allowing me to join you all by phone this evening. As was mentioned, there are 4 items kind of before you, 1 resolution and the first reading of 3 loan ordinances. And that is 8K is a resolution authorizing approving the city's NFA application. 8L, which is the new money related to the transfer station. 8M, which is the first reading of the proposed refunding of the 07 GRT bonds. And then 8N, which is the proposed refunding of the 09 GRT bonds. And so next I thought I might briefly review the new money, the information related to the new money and refunding transactions that the city is considering. There is a small book. I don't know if you all have that in front of you, and I can just I will speak to some of the specifics of that book, and please stop me or interrupt me at any time if you have any questions, and I may just do that quickly because I want to be, respectful of your all's time. It seems like you have already had a pretty lengthy agenda tonight. So the first piece of information that I'll just briefly kind of go over is the proposed new money transfer station financing that the city is considering. This is a approximately $620,000 new money borrowing that the city would be pursuing with the New Mexico Finance Authority. There is 10%, about $63,000 that would be eligible for disadvantaged funding through the Mexico Finance Authority, which is basically 0% financing or 10% of the loan, which is great. This is some monies that the New Mexico Finance Authority did not offer borrowers last year, but the city has received disadvantaged funding in the past. One of those loans we're actually proposing to refund, so it's a 07 loan. At that point, that disadvantaged funding rate was 3%. Today, it's 0%. So, a very attractive rate that's kind of in line with overall rates in the market, which are, still very low and have come down a lot. So the kind of date for this transaction would be June 7th. That's when the city would be able to close on the financing and be able to requisition the funds. Again, this finance would be about $623,000. Have a 15-year final maturity and about an 8.3 year average useful life, and have level debt service. As can be seen, again, if you have this book in front of you on page 4, kind of level payments of about $50,000 per year over 15 years. The next portion that I'll go to is on page 6, and this is an overall kind of summary of the financing that the city is contemplating. I have broken out the 07 financing into two components, even though it is one refunding. There was a market rate loan that the city entered into with the NMFA in 2007, and there also was a component of disadvantaged funding, that 3% borrowing rate that I mentioned earlier. So those are just those two components. And then the final component is the 2009 GRT bond. So I've labeled those 2019 A-1, 2019 A-2, and then 2019 B. So overall, these refundings in aggregate will provide the city, again, these are kind of estimated rates, but will provide the city approximately $590,000 in gross savings over the life of the loan, and that's equivalent to, if you present value those savings, to approximately $410,000 today. These are all current refundings, meaning that these bonds can be refunded right now, and typically issuers consider refundings to be economical when a refunding has 3% present value savings. The city's refunding is well north of that. Again, these are estimated rates, but rates have been coming down and being fairly stable. The city's financing right now has 12.21% savings. So it's about 4 times the amount in terms of percentage savings that municipal issuers usually consider and think to be economically viable for refunding. So very simply, we're just taking more costly debt, 07 debt, 09 debt, and replacing it with less costly debt today. And so in summation, this process that you all are starting tonight with these first readings of the ordinances and these deliberation and consideration of the NMFA application or resolution are all the same steps that you have started and gone through for your previous borrowings through the New Mexico Finance Authority, and some specific dates that I don't know if you have the financing time schedules in front of you, but some specific kind of next steps and important dates outside of this particular meeting tonight that I'd like to point out is that on April 23rd, the commission will, at that point, after tonight's meeting, adopt the loan ordinances, and Daniel and I will be at that meeting in person. Happy to answer more questions or talk about the more steps involved. Then on April 25th, the New Mexico Finance Authority Board will meet to approve the new money and refundings. I guess I just need to take one step back. Thursday, March 28th, is the deadline for all of us on the working group for the city to submit the applications, which we will finalize after tonight's meeting and the actions and considerations that you all are taking. Submit those before their deadline this Thursday, March 28th. So 23rd, the commission adopts the loan ordinances. April 25th, the MFA board meets to approve the city's new money and refunding transactions. The week of May 20th, we will set rates with the New Mexico Finance Authority. And then on June 7th is the day in which we'll financially close this loan, and the funds will be available to the city on a requisition basis. And with that, I will stop. I'm happy to answer any questions. And or Daniel, please, please fill in what I might have missed, or maybe you could talk a little bit more about some of the more detailed steps that I probably kind of skipped over.
Any questions for these gentlemen? Mr. Barry?
We want to just clarify that, we, in the course of evaluating the transfer station, we saw an opportunity with the aquatic center. Hopefully this is not confusing to anybody, but we're talking about a new issue and then two refunding issues. And of course, obviously, the reason is it's a much better deal.
Yep.
With the refunding. So hopefully we're clear on that. We do have with the attorney on the phone, Mr. Alsop, if you have any questions from the legal perspective. But you have the resolution and you have three ordinances which we are going to consider. We have entered into agreement with RBC and Madras Perlin prior to, but you have a proposal here that is specific to the aquatic center issue that we talked about. So that would be the first item of business.
Ready, any questions for the gentleman? Then, Mr. Brad, I believe we'd proceed with item J, to act on the letter of engagement first.
Yes, Mayor.
I'll move to approve the letter of engagement.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the letter of engagement from Madras Perlin for the bond council services related to refunding of the NMFA Aquatic Center loans. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Mayor, I was a little slow on that, but this is, the agreement is set up for execution by the city manager. So if you could authorize that as well.
I will move to approve management by the city manager.
We have a motion on the floor to allow the city manager to approve this. We have a second from Commissioner Giacomo. We'll just take it as a separate motion.
That's fine.
Any other questions, discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that gives Mr. Berry the permission to act as our signator. Okay, item K is deliberate and act on resolution 2019-17, authorizing and approving submission of application financial assistance project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, upon your consideration of this resolution, we will work with RBC Capital and Madras Perlin as far as these proper applications to go to the New Mexico Finance Authority. And we are looking at that March 28th deadline to complete and submit. And there are some detail about what will go in the application in the resolution, but I can answer any questions, or we have the gentleman available if you have any questions on the resolution.
Any questions for Mr. Barry or the gentleman on the phone regarding the resolution?
And by me.
Just simply clarify, allowing it to be sent to, the NMFA.
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-17, authorizing and approving submission of application for financial assistance and project approval to the NMFA.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2019-17. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item L, deliberate and act on introduction of ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement by and between the City of Raton and New Mexico Finance Authority for acquisition and construction of solid waste facility and equipment. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, I would point out that at the April 23rd City Commission meeting, prior to adoption or consideration of adoption of the ordinance, we will schedule public hearings on each one of these ordinance issues that we will now talk about. In the meantime, the public is welcome to submit any input or comments that they have. They can do that in writing. They can appear at the April 23rd meeting and present their opinions to the commission during that public hearing. I would state that public opinion or public input is important to these issues. These are fairly important issues to Raton. We are talking about debt over a long period of time, and so this is the opportunity for the public to provide their input. Under item, let me find the right place here, L, I'll just read the introduction for the benefit of the public and the commission. This is introduction of an ordinance that authorizes the execution and delivery of a loan agreement and intercept agreement by and between the City of Raton and the New Mexico Finance Authority, evidencing a special limited obligation of the governmental unit to pay a principal amount of up to $650,000 together with interest thereon for the purpose of financing, 1, the acquisition and construction of solid waste facilities and equipment, 2, paying a loan processing fee, and 3, funding a loan agreement reserve account, providing for the payment of principal and interest due under the loan agreement solely from the distributions of the revenues of the 1/16th of 1% municipal environmental services gross receipts tax imposed pursuant to Section 719D-10 NMSA, providing for the distribution of the revenues of the municipal environmental services gross receipts tax from the State Taxation and Revenue Department to be redirected to the Finance Authority or its assigns pursuant to the intercept agreement for the payment and principal of interest due on the loan agreement. Delegating authority to make certain determinations concerning the bonds pursuant to Section 61410.2 of NMSA, ratifying the actions heretofore taken, repealing all actions inconsistent with this ordinance, and authorizing the taking of other actions in connection with the execution and delivery of the loan agreement and the intercept agreement.
Very good. Would just like to remind everybody, this is an introduction of the ordinance. That is what we're taking action on tonight.
I do have one question with the possible introduction of 3 ordinances. Is there a way, and I know they don't have a number yet, is there a way that we are able to delineate between them easier? Or are they not assigned a number until they are actually adopted?
Yeah, generally we don't assign the number until they're adopted. Now, as City Manager Barry stated, we do have to post legal notices prior to our April 23rd meetings. So those legal notices will be pretty detailed as to, and I believe, Daniel, are you going to handle those legal notices or did you want me to?
No, I'm happy to handle those,
Okay.
my clan.
So I think the legal notice will be clear to the public what the effect of the ordinance will be, but when I do the agenda for the April 23rd meeting, we would issue it a number that we're adopting that evening. So,
That answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
All right.
Does a possibility exist that we, since the 3 ordinances are related to the Finance Authority, do we have to read all 3 of them, or can we act on all 3 of them at one time?
Mayor, Commissioner Chavez, I would advise the commission to act individually on these as one issue may ultimately be approved and other issues may not be. A commissioner may want to vote differently on the issues. They are distinctly different.
Okay.
and so we're clear this evening, really the action is only that we're going to move forward with introductions.
Correct.
Well, I will move to approve the introduction of ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of loan agreement by and between City of Raton, New Mexico Finance Authority for acquisition and construction of solid waste facility and equipment.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to introduce the ordinance that authorizes the delivery of this loan agreement between Raton and NMFA, specifically for the acquisition and construction of the solid waste facility and equipment. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item M, deliberate and act on introduction of ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement by and between the City of Raton and New Mexico Finance Authority for the purpose of refunding and discharging the outstanding 2007 Aquatic Center loan. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, if you will indulge me in the introduction here again, I think there's some important information, and so I'll run through that a second time, and then we'll do it again on the next item. But this is introduction of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement and intercept agreement by and between the City of Raton and the New Mexico Finance Authority, evidencing a special limited obligation of the governmental unit to pay a principal amount of up to $1,800,000, together with interest thereon, for the purpose of financing: 1, refunding, paying, and discharging the governmental unit's outstanding 2007 loan from the Finance Authority; 2, paying a loan processing fee; and 3, funding a loan agreement reserve account, providing for the payment of the principal and interest due under the loan agreement solely from the distributions of the revenues of the 5th 1/4% municipal gross receipts tax imposed pursuant to Section 719D-9 NMSA, providing for the distributions of the pledged revenues from the State Tax and Revenue Department to be redirected to the Finance Authority or its assigns pursuant to the intercept agreement for the payment of principal and interest due on the loan agreement, delegating the authority to make certain determinations concerning the bonds pursuant to Section 6-14-10.2 NMSA, ratifying actions heretofore taken, repealing all action inconsistent with this ordinance, and authorizing the taking of other actions in connection with the execution and delivery of the loan agreement and intercept agreement. And again, Mayor, this is introduction of an ordinance, is the considered action.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any comments, questions for Mr. Berry or the gentleman on the phone?
I'll make a motion to introduce the ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement by and between the City of Raton and the New Mexico Finance Authority for the purpose of refunding and discharging the outstanding 2007 Aquatic Center loan.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to introduce the ordinance. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. One more time, Mr. Berry.
Mayor
Item
and
N.
Commission, I would ask your indulgence one more time as I talk about the introduction of ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan agreement and intercept agreement by and between the City of Raton and the New Mexico Finance Authority, evidencing a special limited obligation of the governmental unit to pay a principal amount of up to $2,050,000, together with interest thereon, for the purpose of financing, one, refunding, paying, and discharging from the governmental unit's outstanding 2009 loan from the Finance Authority, two, paying a loan processing fee, and three, funding a loan agreement reserve account, providing for the payment of the principal and interest due under the loan agreement solely from the distributions of the revenues of, one, the fifth 1/4% municipal gross receipts tax imposed pursuant to Section 7-19D-9 NMSA, and two, the gross receipts tax distributed to the governmental unit pursuant to Section 7-1-6.4 NMSA, providing for the distributions of the pledged revenues from the State Tax and Revenue Department to be redirected to the Finance Authority or its assigns pursuant to the intercept agreement for the payment of principal and interest due on the loan agreement, delegating authority to make certain determinations concerning the bonds pursuant to Section 6-14-10.2 NMSA, ratifying actions heretofore taken, repealing all action inconsistent with this ordinance, and authorizing the taking of other actions in connection with the execution and delivery of the loan agreement and intercept agreement. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Any comments, questions regarding?
I just wanted to make a comment. In our conversations with Daniel and Evan, this 2009 loan is the one that you just recently authorized the additional payment of $150,000. So we are working with NMFA currently right now to still make that payment for this year. So you'll see that the language in the title just says for a principal amount up to. So if I'm correct, Evan, there's a possibility that amount will be less after that payment is applied?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So just kind of wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
We did approve that at a previous meeting, and we are moving forward with that payment for this year. I don't know, did we want to talk real briefly about our ability to make additional payments in the future once we do this refunding?
Evan, could you kind of go through the options here on the
Payment schedule?
Well,
the callable provisions of our action?
Sure, happy to do so. So typically, and as was with your 2007 and 2009 borrowings to the New Mexico Finance Authority, the city, through those loan agreements and what is a standard call feature or optional redemption feature of the New Mexico Finance Authority, is also very consistent with publicly marketed transactions. Those transactions had 10-year calls. So from the date in which the loan closed 10 years forward, so for the 09 bonds, that was just recently in January, so it was January 16, 2019, they became currently callable. And then 10 years after the 07 transaction, those bonds were currently callable. So they've been currently callable for a couple of years by now. So what is standard is a 10-year call, and the Mexico Finance Authority does not quote-unquote charge you, meaning they add additional spread to their borrowing rates that are listed on their public website. If the city were to take into consideration and wanted to continue prepaying these new transactions, that would cost an additional 50 basis points above this current borrowing rate. So having that ability to do that will cost 50 basis points. This is I don't want to call it a penalty, but it's a fair amount of a charge to have that flexibility. In talking with staff and considering some things, it seemed like maybe the instead of continuing along and prepaying these financings as has been the past. There, you would be able to have access or have those additional monies for other uses of the city. But we're obviously happy to support, and we can show you how that looks quantitatively in terms of those cost differences, in terms of having the bonds prepayable anytime versus a standard 10-year, which doesn't cost anything above the current borrowing rates, a 10-year call.
And Mayor and Commission, I would give you my recommendation to take the low interest rate and not have the all callable provision.
Right. I would agree with that.
Same.
Any other comments, questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the introduction of ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of the loan agreement by and between the City of Raton and MN Finance Authority for the purpose of refunding and discharging the outstanding 2009 aquatic center loan.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to introduce the ordinance. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Berry?
Daniel and Evan, we thank you for standing by with us tonight. We appreciate that, and we look forward to seeing you in Raton in about a month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Likewise, Mayor and Commissioners, Mr. Berry, thank you very much. I look forward to working with you and appreciate the opportunity. And I apologize for and I'll take responsibility for the lengthy titles of those ordinances. Mr. Berry.
We got it all in there.
We got her in, so we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see you in April.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
I do have one question that's not in regards to these, well, kind of, sort of. When we made those, we approved to make those additional payments, we did that through a resolution. Are we gonna have to rescind that resolution?
Well, that resolution was specific to that particular payment, which has been done, and then, of course, Michael Ann talked about the recent action. So that recent action will not be undone. That payment will be made in accordance with your direction in the resolution. That will be made. We should see some reduction. Probably doesn't correspond to the $150,000 directly, but some reduction of principal on that 2009 note. Because that just became callable, that would be the first time we had prepaid on the 2009. In previous years, we have prepaid on the 2007. But those actions all stand. We will not have to undo anything.
Right.
Except that $2,050,000, we'll probably see a number roughly $150,000 less than that when the dust clears on this.
Okay.
So,
We didn't, I guess my question, we didn't commit further payments in that
That
resolution?
was a one-time deal.
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
we've
That was my
always
concern.
Right.
evaluated it on an annual basis.
Okay.
So, and like he said, is he talked about the additional cost involved to do an automatic
Right.
call. That's not something we would
Right.
recommend. So we would essentially have to accrue the funds. I mean, we could certainly wait till the 10-year call provision expires. I believe the 2007 loan matures in 2030 and the 2009 in 2033. So if we have funds accrued, we could probably prepay them off early at the end of those terms. But we certainly don't want to incur additional costs to be able to be making annual payments, so.
Now, in the 2013 ordinance, and that's an increment that is not mentioned in the documents here, there were, I believe, 4 things authorized. One of those was payment of the debt, but there also was replacement of major components, really capital type improvements. And we've seen some pumps go down. We've seen problems with the boiler, some big ticket items like that we've used some of those accrued funds to repair. Also, I think was an energy conservation project in anticipation of maybe a photovoltaic sometime being considered. And I'm not sure if parking lot construction was included in that ordinance, but that ordinance authorizes some different things. So we would accrue funds.
Sure.
There would be some residual funds, and we would have some funds available specifically for when those mechanical components inevitably need replaced on that. Now, it does not authorize any operation or maintenance costs to be covered under that ordinance. So those come from revenues or a general fund.
Right.
So we cannot pay for operation and maintenance type things with that.
Right.
But we would continue to accrue those funds, and I think we would look at it as a balloon payment when the issue becomes callable.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I just couldn't remember if we committed X amount of payments to that, or if it was.
Yeah, really just
a one-time.
annually one-time thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And overall, it lowers our interest rate, and we got a substantial saving over the
Absolutely.
period.
Yep.
And I think figuring it out before, that it was like 9%, the two notes, and we're paying a lot less than that this time, so
Yep.
I think it's a good deal.
Absolutely. I would concur with that. All right, moving on as we approach the 8 o'clock hour. Item O, deliberate and act on resolution 2019-18, disposal of surplus property. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, we have Mr. Phillips here, the Public Works Director, and he's got some information related to this proposal to dispose of surplus property.
So Mayor and Commission, this is short and sweet. We're not really looking to get rid of a pickup truck. Somebody did it for us. So this action tonight involves a automobile accident that was not the fault of a city employee while traveling from the transfer station site. And essentially our 1997 F-150 pickup truck has been determined to be totaled. So Farm Bureau Insurance is offering to pay us $5,213.67 for the loss of the vehicle. This is kind of just a formality to accept that settlement for the totaled vehicle and to allow us to transfer the title into their name. I would say it's more than I anticipated getting for said vehicle. So we would recommend approval of this surplus.
22-year-old pickup.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
And unfortunately, it was one of the nicer trucks in the fleet, but no longer with us.
Any questions for Mr. Berry or Mr. Phillips?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2019-18, disposal of surplus property.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve the resolution 2019-18, the disposal of surplus property. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Phillips. Item P, deliberate and act on resolution 2019-19, the February 2019 financial report. Michael Ann.
Mayor and Commission, in your report packet this evening, we do have our financial reports as of February 28th. You'll see in our general fund operating, less our required 1/12th reserve, we do have available cash of a little over 1.9 million. I've also summarized for you the ending cash balances in our various other funds. You will also see that the March gross receipts tax distribution, this does represent the January sales, which is typically a slow time of the year because it's during the winter and we have less construction. So we are still currently down a negative 1.6% per our budget projection, so that equates to a little over $42,000. We did want to note that in the month of March, this distribution does reflect the quarter cent decrease that went into effect in our GRT as of January 1st, since it does represent the January sales. So you'll see that on the attached history report that we give you on our gross receipts, but I did want to make a note of that. So I did put on there that effective January 1, our GRT did go down to the 8.2708%. We did get the small cities assistance. It was received on March 1st. We budgeted $200,000 for small cities assistance, and our check was $390,276. So we are pretty pleased with that. We're going to be in the process. We're still unsure what type of a budget shortfall that we're going to be dealing with come the end of the fiscal year. So obviously some of those funds will go towards covering that shortfall. We also need to meet with department heads. We have a pretty short window between now and June 30th to expend some funds that we did budgeted for capital equipment, one of those being an ambulance. But we're going to need to really meet with department heads to determine if we can spend the funds prior to the fiscal year, or we should just rebudget it for the FY20 budget, which we're going to start those discussions here in a few weeks. We do have to have an interim budget submitted by June 1st. Just wanted to mention our fixed asset inventory. They will be here the week of April 9th through the 12th to perform those services. And it will be Records Consultants, Inc. It's the same firm that we've used the last several years. Do you have any specific questions on the report?
Any questions? Only once, twice, 3 times.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2019-19, February 2019 financial report.
One second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2019-19, the February 2019 financial reports. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item Q, deliberate and act on resolution 2019-20, fiscal year 19 budget adjustment number 12. My plan, Mr. Berry, what?
Mayor and Commission, in your packet this evening, I did provide you with a budget adjustment, but I've given you a copy of a revised one that I gave to you prior to the meeting. The expenses in the general fund, being that this is the end of the third quarter, I've kind of done a comprehensive review of all of our funds, and so you'll see that I'm making quite a few line item adjustments within our various departments. We are also requesting a couple temporary transfers. One of those being for the aquatics center, due to the shortfall in the GRT that we've experienced this year. I would like to do a temporary transfer just to get them through the end of the fiscal year, and then we would transfer the monies back to the general fund. Typically we see a huge increase in revenues once school lets out in May, and our admission revenues kind of catch up towards the end of the year.
Sure.
And then the depot project, we have I guess a grant reimbursement that is still pending with Federal Highways. Being that it's the end of the third quarter, I was notified by Greg Heitman with Federal Highways. We have a new person that processes these payments, and it might take a little bit longer. So I didn't want to get to the end of the month and not have received that reimbursement. So that's also a temporary transfer that I did add, and that was the revision. And then other than that, everything else was line item adjustments, and then also another request to increase our legal services for the litigation of the landfill.
Where are we at on that cost there, Mr. Berry?
On the, in regard to the depot next?
No, the landfill litigation.
Well, Mayor, that was in district court, and the judge that presided over this case had submitted a resignation, and so we're not sure which judge the case will be assigned to. There was an April a date in April of 2019 on the docket, but with that resignation now, that's not going to happen, and we're not sure. We have a lot of ground to cover before we go to trial. So there is a committee, a judicial committee that met at Raton today, and their job is to submit recommendations to the governor as far as appointment of a new judge. Ideally, they would submit 2 or 3 names to the governor, and then the governor has 30 days to appoint the judge, take action on that. So not sure of the outcome of the commission that met today in Raton, but if that went according to plan, those names would go to the governor, and so a month from now, the governor, between now and April 26th, would name a judge. And then we assume that the new judge would be assigned to Raton, and Judge Chavez would probably be in Taos. Judge Backus was in Taos, and we're not really sure where this will wind up. So I think that will need to be determined. So there are a lot of unknowns, and the biggest unknown is what the schedule looks like.
Okay. Okay, back to our resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2019-20, FY19 budget adjustment number 12.
One second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2019-20, budget adjustment number 12 for fiscal year 19. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item R, city manager's report. Mr. Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. The State Armory Board met last week, and they had advised us that they are finished with the lead remediation project at the Readiness Center, the Armory building located at the airport. That has taken about 3 years. I think they tried to remediate lead 5 times. Turns out, I think it may have been the 6th, I'm not sure, but the 5th time is the charm. And so the staff took a resolution to the State Armory Board stating that they would now take action to transfer the building to the city of Raton. State Armory Board meets every 3 months, so we plan that in 3 months the Armory Board will complete that action of transferring the building to the city of Raton. You remember that there was an agreement between the city of Raton and the State Armory Board. They constructed the building on property owned by the city of Raton. The land was never transferred to the Armory Board. However, the building was constructed, operated, maintained, and owned by the State Armory Board. So we anticipate that action will be taken at their next meeting. Mayor and Commission, the Northeast Regional Transportation Planning Organization will meet here in Raton tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at the Raton Convention Center. You all are welcome to attend that. The public is welcome. The meeting is hosted by the city of Raton. Mayor, I think you're on tap to give a welcome to Raton address to the group. The group consists of personnel from New Mexico Department of Transportation, entities in our region, which the region consists of Colfax, Union, Mora, Harding, San Miguel, Quay, and Guadalupe counties, and also the planning staff for NERPO sets up the meetings and helps conduct the meetings. There will be a presentation from a representative from Ports to Plains at this meeting tomorrow, and it's anticipated to take place from 10 o'clock till noon. I will not be there. I will attend a seminar that has scheduled by New Mexico Economic Development Department in Santa Fe, and this seminar is in regard to the usage of new market tax credits and opportunity zone programs. The mayor, you talked about meeting with the delegation in Washington, D.C. About opportunities for Raton. These are some powerful tools as far as investment of private dollars in the rural economy, so I'll attend that and try to find out more about strategizing those tools. Mr. Campbell from Raton Waterworks tells me that on April 1st he will switch exclusively to Lake Maloya usage. Up till now, we've taken a little bit of Maloya water, but primarily we've diverted water from the Eagle Nest Reservoir Cimarron Canyon diversion system. We will idle that system during April. We are seeing, because of snow melt, increased turbidity on that system, and then we anticipate that when we get into monsoon season and we see some rain over the burn area, we'll see water that will probably not be treatable. We went through some problems last summer, and we anticipate that that will definitely happen again this year and then probably into the coming years. But as stated by Commissioner Chavez, Lake Maloya is full and spilling, and we will go to that option. I was told that the staff from Congressman Ben Ray Lujan will conduct office hours in Raton. I do not have the date and time. I neglected to get that before I came in the meeting. So I will communicate that here locally. We'll try to get that to all the media outlets. And of course, the public is invited to come down and talk to Congressman Lujan's staff about whatever issues they would like to talk about. So I'll need to get that date and time. That meeting will take place in the commission chambers here, and I'll get that information out. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, just to touch on, since he's going to that conference or seminar tomorrow, the focus of the Congressional Cities Conference that I went to with the league was on opportunity zones and new market tax credits. So there's a big focus there right now, as well as the proposed infrastructure. Now, I don't want to say bill, but what the federal government has proposed as far as infrastructure funding is they'll pay 20% of the project, but local government will pick up 80%, and that's just not doable. And that was met with a resounding no vote from our delegation. So that's all I have. Anybody else?
The meeting tomorrow at the convention center, is someone from the city going to be attending the?
We will have staff available at the whole meeting. We have voting delegates that are voting members of NERPO. I think, Mayor, you're probably not staying for the morning.
Be there for
You're
a little
there
while
for the
anyway. Yeah.
Introduction.
Yeah.
There's some interesting information. It covers, regional transportation concerns. Usually very interesting programs, and of course, they do some review of funding for programs like the Transportation Alternatives Program, which currently the City of Raton is asking for about $1 million for completion of our Great Blocks project. That's gone through NERPO and then been passed along to DOT, and we do anticipate hearing some news on our application by the end of the fiscal year, and we have some optimism about that. I would note, Mayor, that we did get notice from DOT about new Highway Transportation Commission members. And so that information is out. They've got a meeting scheduled in April in Albuquerque, but largely that commission will consist of new members recently appointed by the governor.
All right. Any other comments? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.